So,
Well, perhaps maybe to start, which is somewhat what I did with Alberto, is to get a feeling for the history of CLL in Spain. And I realize it's almost impossible to talk about the history of CLL without some interface between internal medicine, hematology, and CLL.
absolutely.
So maybe start with the history of the Department of Hematology in Barcelona.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's so the history starts in 1969. That was when I finished medicine in the University of Salamanca. And then my dad, my professor and one of my first mentors, that was Professor Ciril Rozman, that he was based in Barcelona. I mean, he said to me, well, you see, I will come back to Barcelona to have the chair there. Why you don't come with me? So, and my personal history about CLL for a long, long period of time has been extremely linked to that of Ciril Rozman. I mean, at the very first, we started by internal medicine, because you are absolutely right. These were still the days in which the smart people were dedicated to internal medicine. The not so smart guys were those who were dedicating to a specialty. So, and this lasts for 5, 6 years, something like that. And then at a given moment, it was Rothman's personal decision. He said, well, listen, I started realizing that internal medicine is becoming a too big field, and that it would be much better for each one of us, to dedicate to a different specialty. I myself, this is what he said, I will dedicate to hematology. So, and I would be very glad if you follow me in hematology. And that's the main reason why I went to Paris. So in those days, America was very, very far away. So, and we used to stay in Europe, either in the UK, or where the hematology was extremely powerful, or in France, where there was the dominant figure, the leading personality of Jean Bernard. And I stayed there for almost 2 years. And as I said to you before, I mean, I learned many, many things, particularly in terms of organization of a big department. I mean, keeping focused on a given field, and I was particularly interested in lymphoma. When back to Barcelona, that was 1976, 75. I was really looking at how to incorporate myself into the Department of Hematology. I mean, the Department of Hematology was already something going on. And there were people dedicated to acute leukemia, other people working on myeloma, other people. So I had to seek for a disease, and I thought from the very beginning that CLL was a very interesting disease for a variety of reasons. It's frequent, it's very easy to be studied. I mean, you just need to draw blood. In those days, there were no good therapies for CLL, so that's an additional challenge. So many of these things were around, and then one day I opened my issue of blood, and I came across to the country right paper, 1975, with the classification, and I took one of my friends and my associates those days, a resident of mine, as a matter of fact, and I said, well, you see, man, it's interesting because the plots were not survival plots, they were dots. So based on the life expectancy, something like that. Mm-hmm. 0 and 1 and 2 and so let's try to reproduce these results in our own cities. And we started, I mean, dossier by dossier, history by history. I mean, collecting the data, and the classification was very nicely reproduced. Yeah. And then I got a paper published in Lancet. Actually, that was a letter, but I was so proud. I mean,
sure.
I was a young person, you know.
To Lancet.
To get a letter in Lancet, and the letter in Lancet was a key. I mean, to much more things, because immediately after, again, that was probably 76, 77. I received a phone call from a very good friend of mine, whose name is Guillaume Biguero, And I think that this is another person that should say a word about the history of CLL.
Absolutely.
Guillaume Figueiro was, in those days, an associate. Afterwards, as I did, he became independent, but he was a close associate of Jacques-Louis Binet. And Guillaume Figueiro said to me, well, Emilio, listen, do you know what? We are organizing a meeting on CLL, people interested on CLL in Paris. Can you come? And I said, of course. I mean, why not? And that was what we call the first international workshop on CLL.
And that was 77?
78. And I have the list. I will show you the list afterwards in the computer, because that was very, very amazing. There were Jacques-Louis Binet, of course, and Cathy Rai, I mean, which to me are the key persons in the history, recent development of CLL. There was David Galton, Daniel Katowski, Arthur Savitsky.
Arthur, yeah.
Arthur Savitsky. Jean Kronke. Do you remember Jean Kronke?
Of course, but I never met him.
There was a cytogenetist whose name was Tin Han.
Oh, really? He was at the first meeting?
Yeah, he was there. And I mean, I wouldn't miss anyone else. There was Canty, Jacques-Louis, Guillaume Figueiro, Galton, Danny Katowski, Kronke, Arthur Savitsky. It was me. And period. I think that was...
May I be so bold as to ask whether the first meeting was in the hospital or in Professor Benet's
It was in the hospital. It was in the hospital. Pitié-Salpêtrière. And then we tried. The main reason to have this meeting was, the willingness of Jacques-Louis Binet to gather all of us, to put all of us together. But also there was a kind of scientific reason, and I must say, the scientific reason, quotation marks, is that in those days, besides the dry classification, Jacques-Louis Binet had published his own classification. So that was once more America versus Europe, or Europe versus, and we wanted to conciliate the two classifications, and we did. We did a kind of effort, and we published a position paper in British Journal of Hematology, in which it was recommended to combine dry and Binet stages, and to say, well, when you say that a patient has stage A disease, next you have to put in between brackets if this is a stage 0 or a stage 1 or a stage 2. Well, that was the small community that started, and that the atmosphere was very friendly. And I would like to emphasize that I think that all this history, without the complicity between Jacques-Louis Binet and Cathy Rai, would have never been possible. I think that there is a matter of friendship.
Yes.
Because the history of CLL, if you ask to me, Emilio, what is the meat? What is the core of the modern history of CLL? I would say to you, is a long, nice, long-lasting, very nice and generous history of friendship. That's at the very beginning. Yeah? Then we start having meetings, and the meetings were attended by 30 people, 40 people. I got a meeting in Barcelona. I will show you the photography, and we were something like 60 people. That was a big, big success. 60 people interested in CLL. Last meeting we had in Barcelona a couple of years ago were close to 3,000 people, if I remember well. So that was fantastic. And then, if we have to keep talking about what happened in Spain, there were many, many people in Spain that became interested in CLL. One of the very first ones, she was my student, as a matter of fact, is Estela Matutes.
Oh.
Estela Matutes, she's not from Barcelona, she's from the Balearic Islands, but she was a student in our department. She became interested in CLL, and then she moved to Daniel Katowski.
Sure.
And afterwards, I think that in our own department, there were people that immediately got interested in the disease, and so also in Salamanca. I wouldn't like to mention too many specific names because of the risk of missing somebody for sure. Also, and I am very proud of it, because since we had some credit, there were some people from abroad coming to work on CLL, and a guy from the south of Italy, which is a very good friend of mine, whose name is Stefano Mollica, and you know Mollica for sure.
I do.
Because of his papers. I mean, he spent something like 2 years in our department, and he became a CLL aficionado. And that's more or less, I mean, how it happened. Yeah? Now it's a big department. Now is so many people interested in CLL, running their own projects.
The
People from Salamanca, they are very good, as you know.
The first meeting in Barcelona was in a little suburb
I think
or a
that
town
this-
called.
I think that this-
it's in
I think that this is the summary.
Sussex or something.
1991. That's those are the proceedings of the 1991. That and it is interesting because if you look at the list of the people that attended that meeting, so it's recent names. I mean, you can see here Julius Sanos. You can see Tom Kipps.
Yes.
You can see
Lawrence.
Guillaume Diguero. You can see Binet here, Han, that was Robin Four, that
Yes.
was already interested, and Anna. So there were the French cooperative groups. I mean, well, the cooperative groups have been very important. There was one in France, there was another one in Spain. I was leading the Spanish cooperative group called Ketema. The German one was the very last one, by the way. So there were basically the French and the UK, that was Danny Katowski, of course, and the Spanish. But it is interesting to go through the list of these people here. So you can see here for Eva Kimby and now Melset, the
Yes,
famous
yes.
immunologist, Gessler. So many of them, they are still active. Chesson.
Yes.
So Michelet and Seven. I mean, that was Haley Cell somehow. Michael Keating
Yes.
was